Okay, we're picking back up with the layer tutorials where we left off. We just created the arch. We made it to correct scale and size and moved it into place. So the next part that we're going to focus on, and we'll focus on these signs first. So I'm going to go back to my arch, and I'm going to go up to File, Open, and I'm going to open up the signs. Now notice when it opens up, it added another tab up here, which is what we want. So I can keep flipping back between all my tabs. And when I'm done with one, I can close it out and still keep working on the other ones. These are all each individual files. So we could save each one of these individually. So with the ice cream, it's going to be up to you which ones you actually want to use. And we're going to make a selection of the different objects on here, and then we'll move them into our actual photograph that we're working on. So to do this, I'm simply just going to use the rectangle marquee tool to make a selection because we're actually going to soften these edges once we get into our photograph. So I don't need it to be perfect. So you can select any one you want. So for this one, I'm pretty sure I did this one on a tutorial. And let's see, I did that one, and I did the delicious ice cream here. So I did these two up here. So I'm going to select, and you can use any ones you want. If you want to use this one down below, you're more than welcome to. But I'm just going to make a rectangle around it. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I made the rectangle around it. And now I'm going to go up to, we need to make this a layer so we can drop it in to our other picture. So I'm going to go up to Layer, New, Layer via Copy. That means that I'm making a copy of what I have selected. So when I select this, you'll see it show up on the side here. So if you look in your layer panel, you have your background, but you also have the layer one that contains my actual image. So I'm going to do this one more time with a different image, but you got to be careful. You have to select what layer you're working on. So I'm going to select my background layer to make it active again. And I'm going to make another box around this. I'm going to go up to Layer, New, Layer via Copy. And now you notice I have another layer here. So once we have the layers created, we can take these and drop it into our picture. And if you did not want to, if you want to put this whole picture in, you can actually do that. Now, we're not going to do it for this tutorial, but for your other projects, when you insert a picture in, I can simply just click and drag this into another file. So for this one, I'm going to start out with my layer one up here, and I'm going to click my layer, and I'm going to drag and hold it up to my tab of my actual arch picture, and I'm going to drop it in the canvas. So I'm just going to, you can see the hand, I still have a hold of it, and I'm going to release, and it's going to drop it in the center of it. So with this now, obviously, it's a little bit smaller than what I need it to be. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I have my layer selected. I'm going to go up to Edit, Transform, Scale, and I'm going to hold my Shift button and I'm going to grab the corner. This keeps it in proportion. And again, it doesn't matter the size of it. So I have it. It looks a little blurry, but when we scale it, until you hit the check mark, it usually doesn't become clear until I hit the check mark. So check mark. See there, now it's clear now. And now I'll use my move button and I will move it into place. Okay, so we have that one here, and we're going to do the same thing with the other one. So I'm going to go back to my signs picture. I'm going to click on the layer that has my sign that I want. I'm going to click and drag up to here, and I'm going to drop it in. Same thing. It's a little bit too small, so I'm going to go Edit, Transform, Scale, And I'm going to hold my shift option on the keyboard, make it big, a little bit bigger. I'm going to hit the check mark, and then I can move it into place. I'm going to actually put that one right here, anywhere on this sidewall. Okay, so we're going to look over a couple different options now. So I talked about layers before and how they're stacked on top of each other. But I want to be able to see these rocks behind these pictures. So I want to almost make it look like it's spray painted or it's vintage looking on here. Now, to do that, if I would simply just take the layer, this bottom layer, and move it up, notice that when I move it up, it's in between these two layers. So why did this pink layer or this pink ice cream sign disappear? Well, again, if you think about pieces of paper, the very, very top is your top stack. And then as you go down and I peel layers off, that's how I would be able to see them. So I'm going to actually make this down to bottom. And for this, to make it kind of the vintage look on it, I'm just going to lighten it a little bit. So there's two ways to do this. I can go up here to my layer settings, and right now it says my layer is normal. If I click the down arrow and I go to overlay, you can see that it lightens up a little bit. I don't like that. I think it's a little too light, a little bit too washed out. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to go back to normal. But over here where it says opacity, I'm going to actually drop this down. And if you hit the down arrow, you can either type the percentage in here, or if I hit the down arrow, there's a slider. And I'm just going to keep clicking until it's something that I think that looks good. So you can see I have it at 72. I can see some of the bricks behind it. I can see kind of these lines behind it. I'm just going to do a little bit more. So maybe right there is good. I can still see this kind of brick around it. So I did 67 on there. And I'm going to do the same thing for this sign. I'm going to hit the opacity button. I'm going to drop it down a little bit. And this one, I'm actually going to do 66 on that one. Again, I can kind of see the brick behind it. Makes it a little bit more vintage. And these crisp edges, we're actually going to fix here a little bit later on the edges. So this was part 2. Being able to actually make selections, bring them in, and changing the opacity of it to be able to see image behind it. Next lesson we're going to do is part 3. Is we're going to put the landscape in behind it. So we can actually insert the road, and then we'll work with the different objects.